like I did it with her. We did farm day, like print day, distance day. But it makes me wonder, what if you had like a 20? You do each day. But he sounds like the kind of kid that
I know.
you just
That's
tell
how my
him.
parents did, right? And I had this bill recently. Very small. It's a picture of getting his magnets back, because he knows it's my value. Is,
Yeah.
Right? Good grades. And, yeah, that's my value. Obviously, you need to make it. It's because I place such a high value on
Yes.
this. And it necessarily has to be the thing that matters most.
Yeah.
I know. But Harper's doing good.
Yeah, academically, she's fine. She asked to go to counseling the first couple of weeks. She's most of her friends are ninth graders, which I think just happened because she knew one girl. And so, from my perspective, like, that makes sense. But, so it's more of a social. I think it's tough, which I didn't anticipate because I thought more like her. But she still says there's the whole things, which I wasn't anticipating. But but yeah, she's therapy. She seems to love that. So great. Did you like yours or no?
Lightly. I mean, I don't have.
Right. And me neither, but there's been a bit of like you talk. Hey, you know, she's like something. Oh.
13, 14.
Yeah.
Sorry. A little better.
Now she's an adult, right?
Like every day I feel like something's wrong with her. She's like, it's just because it's fine. It's
my
yes.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Good.
Good.
I didn't know I was the person holding everything
Well,
up.
Jordan is also stuck behind a, so we're waiting on him. But
Oh wait,
we've got
am I
quorum.
sitting in the room?
Yeah, you are.
Oh.
We're good.
You get a minute to breathe.
Yeah, get your computer out, get settled. And we'll go.
I realize I.
Oh, well, that was only meant for you. It wasn't meant for me. That's okay.
I appreciate it.
Good.
You know, the colder season makes it. It's, I mean, aside from already struggling during every other season. But. I appreciate it. And I think we just didn't really get a chance to talk the last time. Because you were.
Leading the meeting.
Yeah. And then I went to talk to someone. And it was an old coworker from North. It was Kroll.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, her real name. I just always call people their teacher names forever.
Absolutely. All right, you guys feel ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. And let me get to my agenda here. All right, do we have public comment this afternoon? Don't see anyone. Okay, so we will move forward. We are going to make one change to the order of the agenda today. We're going to move into the purchasing agenda first, and then from there we'll go to our finance training item. This is so that our staff can prepare for the virtual town hall this evening. So with that, Ms. Cribbs, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, and I have several colleagues here to help assist with questions as well. So the first item is to have virtual social worker services for the special ed department for the 23-24 school year. And this is our estimated cost for the entire year with maximum healthcare staffing. So I do have Roxana Alahi here if we've got more questions that we want to.
I do have a question. I was
Okay.
just looking over this over the weekend, but so is this, are these social worker services, so are they GRPS employees or would they just, it's just outsourcing the work that we need in the district? Okay.
Correct.
That's what I was
You
gonna
can-
say.
yeah, yeah.
Welcome
I'll-
forward.
I'll wait,
Rather
I'll wait,
than
yeah.
I to fill in the blanks, we'll
Yes.
bring that.
Too far back.
Good afternoon, good evening,
All right.
Yes, good afternoon.
whatever. So this is an outside source for providing social work services directly related to what's written in scholars' IEPs.
Mhm.
And so because we've not been able to find internal people, and we have approval from union to be able to contract for our
Great.
social workers and our psychologists, this is one of those. So we've already been doing some work with them this year, and they've been delightful to work with. And so we just want to continue that, but because of the max and the payments, we need to keep it moving, so.
That's
Right.
And we have a couple more vacancies coming our way, we know, so we will be utilizing them. We had a couple interviews even on Wednesday this last week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to fill some of those vacancies.
Okay. And so do the social workers that work with our students, are they, I know they're virtual, but are they like local to the area? Are they just like all over the nation? Like,
It's a combination, so
Okay.
their goal is to provide in-person people first.
yeah,
And if they can, they'll do that. If they can't, then they've been providing the virtual people.
okay,
So it's a combination.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, so our next, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next item down is to develop a summer scholar experience for learning at it says it may be more than one historically black college and university. So this is our planning for that, and the service is using HBCU Power Awards. There was an additional memo attached in there as well, but I do have Bridget Cheney here as well if there's additional questions. And Mr. Eatman, we changed the order.
Okay.
If you're looking puzzled, like, how did they get to the purchasing agenda
No,
already?
this is-
So,
Blood on this document, so I'm like, what is happening? Why is this on here? So I'm thrown off by that. That's my
Okay,
puzzle
that's
look
what I was
is
gonna say.
where did this blood come from? So that's a
all right,
whole nother
but that's what it
conversation.
is. It was, we've got a couple staff members that need to get ready for a virtual meeting tonight, so we moved the purchasing agenda up. So,
Thank you for informing me. I appreciate you.
so.
Any questions for Ms. Cheney about this item?
So I'm looking at the memo. It's not necessarily something that I need answered. Just, this is going to continually be something that I bring up, and I think I'm just beating a dead horse, just talking about I see the priority scholar outcomes. I appreciate that at the bottom of the memo. Again, I will just continue to say, like, I would like to see more strategic, and I know that's partially our job as well, to see a strategic or to see tangible goals connected to those
Measurable.
measurable goals to those priorities. And so I just wanted to add that, but I do appreciate Ms. Cheney adding that to the bottom of the memo.
Sure, no problem, and I'm glad you said that. Okay, yes, because I was like, did I write that in my head, or did I
Smarty
put that
goals,
on
yeah.
here? Yeah, the
Good.
Smarty goals, so we do want, certainly, since this is our first go-around at it, to have a minimum of 10 scholars attend this summer. Hopefully more, would love to, but that was kind of our minimum standard for how this begins, and like I say, hopefully more. It is certainly not something that we're limiting to 10, but we felt like that was a good with the interest through the conversations with scholars, and parents felt that that could be something that would be a good target to hit, and Yeah, so that's the measurable objective, at least for attendance.
Right, right.
There's some more things beyond that, but we will hopefully build those into our HBCU programming that we do moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next item down is with the City of Grand Rapids, their Office of Children, Youth, and Families. We have agreed to pay a portion of the salary and benefits for their administrator. So this is
Shannon Harris. Yeah.
so this is our portion of the cost of that position. They have sent over the invoice for this year. The next item down is a renewal for our software for the facility use and event management for the Ungerbox system out of the facilities department. And the next item down, and I'll ask Craig to come up because he can speak far more eloquently about our enhanced 911 delivery services for all school for people drive technology.
I do have a quick question for you for OCC, our community's children. Does this ever increase, or is this the same amount each year?
It increases
Based off of the
the
annual?
percentage stays the same, but the dollar amount adjusts based on salaries and benefits.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. So in 2020, the state of Michigan enacted a law actually that had been on the books but had not become active until that time, and that related to multi-line telephone systems, much like what GRPS has. And so it wasn't just K-12 or us, it was the whole state for all multi-line telephone systems where when someone dialed 911 from one of those phone lines, it had to be able to provide enough information to the public service answering point, the 911 center, to get an emergency responder to, depending on the size of the building, to the floor, or in some cases to the room number that the call came from. So we implemented at that time a solution that, with our existing phone system, that would allow that information to be transmitted to the public service answering, or the PSAP as it's called. Since that time, we have continued to maintain that system, but a couple things have happened. One is we have had quite a few staff who, between working remotely and using their GRPS phone number, or having a phone number, a GRPS phone number that moves with them, as they may think a healthcare worker who works in a school a couple hours a day, and then another school another couple hours a day, that sort of thing. It has been a lot of administrative overhead for us to utilize our existing phone systems functions to make sure that that follows them around. And so we started looking at solutions that would allow us to automate that. At the same time, we're also looking at legislation that is currently being considered by Michigan for, there's actually a couple laws, one of which is, has been nicknamed Alyssa's Law, related to one of the victims of the of one of the mass shootings at a K-12 institution. And anyway, what it relates to is the ability for emergency responders to get quicker notifications from folks who have either anything from an active shooter to a evacuation condition or something like that in a public school. So with the likelihood of some of those legislation or those bills coming down the pipe, we looked at a solution that would prepare us for that and also automate some of those things that have really high administrative overhead because of the mobility of our staff. And so this solution is the one that will allow us to do all of that, including notifications to on-site security personnel, the ability for our staff to monitor 911 calls in progress, for options for emergency responders to be notified more quickly, which would tie right into the House bill that's in place right now. So that's kind of that's the long story about all the little details of that.
So is this is something that we don't have implemented currently, that we're going to, or starting
For that, we hope for the next school year.
for the
yeah.
next school year?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we would start it in the fall of '23. I'm sorry, fall of '24 for the '24-25 school year. So we have a portion of it in place now. The part that is already part of Michigan law, that part is in place with just a high administrative overhead. So we're going to reduce that and then add the additional features that will set us up for the additional legislation.
Is there annual costs or yearly costs associated with this, and what do you estimate that to be?
There is. So the services that are in the purchasing agenda item, we expect that there's going to be a large part of that is actually the service part of it, the provider that connects to us essentially. The implementation of this is rather low, so we expect it to be only about $10,000 less than what we see here for our renewal costs annually.
Any other questions?
Assuming it comes with software updates, or do we?
It does.
You know, lately,
Absolutely.
companies have been like very much so nickel and diming every aspect, even
Yeah.
updates. And so, do you anticipate any updates or software updates that are associated with this particular platform to already be embedded in that cost, or is that additional cost on top of the?
As it stands today, they are included in the costs that are the yearly renewals. So, we know that vendors like to change that stuff, but as it stands today, we expect it to be bundled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
The next item down is because of our bond election was a special election, we are responsible for the costs. So we did get the bill from Kent County in, so that's the $49,927. It's actually less than I was anticipating when we did
That's great.
the operating mill renewal. It was between 70 and 80,000. So
Awesome.
the next item is with our Loop After School program. Using some ESSER funds, we are moving some costs that are traditionally funded out of our 21st Century Grant over to our ESSER grant, and freeing up to allow additional funds to go to our two providers, both the YMCA and United Methodist Community House. The original blanket order on YMCA was enough to cover the additional contract amounts. But with United Methodist Community House, we do need to increase the original blanket order by that $227,500.
What is the Loop After School program? Do you mind?
It's a 21st Century Grant. We call our Loop After School, we call it Loop. So currently we have 3 cohorts that are running and providing services at schools. And I'm going to ask Mr. Atkins to come down because he oversees that program. But as I feel myself getting in deeper, I'm going to call my experts.
That's right.
You were definitely headed in the right direction, Rhonda. And so we do have 3 cohorts, 15 schools that either have United Methodist as a provider or the YMCA. And so, like everything else, it just costs a little bit more money. And so we try to be really good partners, and we looked at trying to give increases to some of the salaries, and so we can get staffing. And so you spread it across salaries and benefits across different schools. This is what the costs end up being.
No cost to families.
No cost to
My
families.
kids go before school, so I can get to work.
Is there an age?
And so our Loop programs currently are kindergarten through 8th grade. And we're hoping at some point we can go K-12 again.
Okay.
That's the goal.
So I have a question that I think this ties into, because I'm hoping this is already looped in, but with the new partnership that is YMCA, what is our bus system? I was gonna say-
Transportation?
No,
The rapid?
the Rapid, and then GRPS at the Rapid Transit, that new daycare combination with the GRPS, is this included in that? Because that's also an after-school program.
It's not included in the 21st century. These are 5-year grants, and so when we rewrite, that's a possibility, but at this point, it's not.
Okay.
That's funded through Kellogg? Is that who? I forget.
That's
Okay.
what I was gonna say.
Kellogg put up the initial Got it.
investment,
and then there are some other foundations that put in as well, and that was for the capital project. I see. For at the Rapid to renovate, retrofit, and all of that. And then the operating pieces will be split between YMCA, GRPS, which will be GSRP. Say that. Yeah. Okay. GRPS, GSRP. Yep. Funded, and then Head Start as well, so that we can have a wider range of kids who are eligible to attend. Perfect.
I've heard about that program, and I thought it was such a unique added bonus for our scholars, and it just made this triggered that, and to say, is this part of that, or is that something completely different? Because it seems like it will fall in underneath this. So, okay.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Great, thank you so much.
Moving down to building and sites purchases, we have an addition to the Ottawa Hills design with Century A&E Corporation. When we did the initial request, it was below the amount to bring to the board. As facilities has worked with the design project, the cost is coming above the initial, so that's why we're bringing it forward now as a new purchase order total for the $36,000.
Good.
Okay. The next item down is for the master key system, including key cores and master keys for the Innovation Central. It will be funded with our bond program. And the last item down there is related to Innovation Central as well, as we're continuing the work on the auditorium and making that sure it's functional when we're done for the lighting and sound system design.
Quick question about oftentimes I come across where I believe something means something else and it means a whole different meaning inside the district. So is this master key like a real master key and lock system, key turn, or is this like
It is
key
a-
for something else? Like, I'm just curious.
Probably actual keys.
Is it an actual
I think
key
so.
to lock?
Yeah.
Or is this a program that's called Master Key, and we're just like, I just, out of
No.
curiosity.
Good afternoon. It's good to see all of you. No, it is actual keying
Okay.
of the entire building. We do use a proprietary system, so it needs to go through this vendor, and it will be to rekey the whole building.
Got it. Thank you.
So, before you go, I also had a question about it. I wasn't gonna ask it, but now since you're here, I might as well. I was just gonna ask, I know we have to start somewhere, right? So I don't know if there's a reason why Innovation Central is like the first one, or if it's like one of few that we need to redo the master keys for, or what the reason is.
Well, we've done some already.
Okay.
This is just another one that
Okay.
that we're doing.
Okay.
And it's new doors, right? We have new doors and hardware from the renovation?
In some places, we have new doors, and
Yeah.
not all.
Okay.
But it's basically to rekey the whole
It's
building.
under construction,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
As using our bond funds, we have been doing this master key changeover at several other buildings as well, so
There's actually one more item, item 3, if you scroll down.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yep.
And our last one, and this may bring Mr. Smart back up again, but we've got an addition for King Scott. As we were doing the additional design services on Innovation Central, we've got an increase there.
Back to the auditorium wall, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure, understandable.
I didn't hear what you said.
Because of the auditorium wall, that had to be, yes, structurally redesigned, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to the end. Any other questions or discussion about the purchasing agenda? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to move this forward to the full board.
So moved.
Support.
Great, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
All right.
All right, thank you for that adjustment, everyone. And
Yes.
now we'll move forward to our finance training item, which today is employee contracts. Welcome, Ms. Lusk.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Do you want to be my official slide
Yep.
changer, or, okay?
Yep, that's-
All right, thank you. Please go to the next slide. All right, so what I'm here to train you guys a little bit on, and just to give you an FYI, is what exactly collective bargaining is, what the process is with the unions, and what the board's role is in all of that, so that when I come and I say, hey, we have a new contract, please ratify it, you can already know what that means. So as some of you may know, collective bargaining is the negotiation of employment terms or terms of employment between an employer and a group of employees. And those group of employees are usually represented by a union. In this case, our employees are represented by the Michigan Education Association for the most part. We have 6 union groups, and I'll get into the details of that in a couple slides. But we have 6 unions. They're all represented by the MEA. And so when what happens is that, if you could go to the next slide. So what happens is that there is a law called the Public Employee Relations Act, or PARA. And under PARA, specific employment terms, and I'll get into more about what that means in a second, there are 3 types of employment terms. Those that are mandatory subjects of bargaining, meaning we must negotiate those with the union. We cannot make a unilateral decision, but we actually have to negotiate it and come to an agreement. There are permissive subjects of bargaining, things we may negotiate with the union but don't necessarily have to negotiate, and then there are prohibited subjects of bargaining, which are subjects that we are absolutely under the law not at all required to negotiate with the union, and frankly, nor should we, but that are the employer's decision alone to make. So those are the three types of employment terms. Nope, you did it right. Thank you. So what's important and what the board will be focused on the mandatory subjects of bargaining. And under para, there are 3 types of mandatory subjects that we must negotiate with the union. Those are wages, hours, and then the very general and broad other terms and conditions of employment. And if you think that's broad and vague, I think you're absolutely correct. And actually on the next slide is an overview of all of the mandatory subjects of bargaining. So in other words, the things we absolutely unequivocally must negotiate with the union and cannot decide on our own. And like I said, those primarily include wages, and that includes not only wages for salary schedules and things of that nature, but any stipends, any overtime amounts, or not overtime specifically because that's under the law, but any additional work that any employee does as a unionized member. That all goes and must be negotiated with the union. Hours, so start and stop times for the day, rest breaks, lunch breaks, anytime they have jury duty, how that payment works and from whom. So not all of these topics apply specifically to GRPS, but this is kind of a broad overview of everything that we have to negotiate with the union. And so once we sit down and come to an agreement with the union, that becomes what's called a collective bargaining agreement. And that agreement lays out all of the mandatory negotiated terms that we negotiate with the union. And if you go to the next slide. And this brings us to the board's role in all of this. So this is typically how the bargaining process works. We may, before we go into bargaining with the union, we may come to the board and ask for financial parameters. Not always, though. It depends. Usually we just work with the CFO, Rhonda, or last time I did this with her predecessor, Larry Oberst, but usually we get a general sense of this is how much we have to spend. What can we do with that as far as salaries go? So, and the typical things that
What would cause, and I guess this is awesome.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, I'm looking at the seasoned individuals. What would cause the board to be asked about those parameters? Like what are the circumstances that will lead to you requesting the parameters on behalf of the board?
The best way I can say it, if there's any funny thing going on, if it's just typical, we're looking at possibly a 2.5 or 3.5 salary increase, and that's something that we can take from general funds, then that's what we'll do. But if there's something that requires something above and beyond the typical or the normal, as far as salary increases or other types of monetary benefits, that's when we'd usually bring it to the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the union typically says we want to bargain about X, Y, and Z, and the things that I like to bargain about are the things where, because it is a contract, and sometimes you put language into a contract, and then when you go to implement it, you're like, oof, I wish we included this, I wish we included this, I wish we included this. So what my role is, and myself and Christy Atwood, our new director of HR, we're the lead negotiators for the district. And we prepare all year, or all, throughout, once a contract is ratified, we start making notes about what we want to bring to the bargaining table the next time we sit down with the union to bargain. It's typically contract language that's confusing, or that needs to be just elaborated on a bit more. So the first step in the bargaining process is identifying the issues, preparing demands. Then the union hires a team of professional negotiators, the MEA in this case. I put together the negotiating team for the district side of things. We continue to meet. It's usually after hours for many, 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 many months that we sit down, our team, their team, and work on finding terms and conditions that we can both agree to. Once we do that, the both teams will submit the agreement to their constituents. So our constituent will be the board. So we present the brand new agreement, and we'll also go through and make, instead of asking you guys to read the agreements because they're quite long, I provide a highlight or an overview. These are the things that we changed this time around. You guys then vote on approving it, or if you don't like one of the things that we added, let me know why. We go back and we have to renegotiate with the union, which we're happy to do. And so then once the agreement is approved by both the employee group and the board, we have a brand new contract. And that's the process. So just a little bit more overview in case you're not aware. We have 6 unions currently. I will say that The union recently has moved to try to consolidate 3 of the union groups, which I'm actually quite excited about because that's fewer contracts, fewer things to worry about, and we've been in support of them doing that. There's no issue with that. But as things stand right now, we have 6 union groups, and I've also included on this slide which of our employees are in which groups. I want to say about 18 or 1,900 of our 2,100 employees are unionized. So most of our staff is in one union group or the other. As you can see, we kind of recently-ish approved brand new contracts for everybody, for all the different union groups. We'll have some expiring in June of this year, so we'll have to sit down with those union groups. About a couple months beforehand, we'll start the negotiation process. And we'll also provide updates to the board and the status of the process and where we're stuck, what if we'd like board input to see what the board would like us to do with a certain matter. That's something that we might bring to the board. We would go into closed session for that, just to be able to discuss very frankly what our position is with respect to certain topics. Next slide.
Sorry, I did have a question from that last slide.
Yeah.
So the only one I wasn't aware of is the last bargaining unit.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of employees in that group, but yeah.
Okay, what is GREOA?
So that is our Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps,
Oh,
which we have a hand. JROTC.
oh no, I meant what is the
Oh goodness, what does it stand for? Grand Rapids Educational Officers Association, because they're training corps officers.
okay.
And then actually sometimes it's kind of a odd conglomeration of employees because
Yeah.
it's also family support specialists.
Right.
We also have a totally separate union for paras, despite the fact that they're very similar to CCWs. They're in a different unit. It's just how they ended up unionizing at which times.
Okay, and which 3 were they talking about consolidating?
They're talking about consolidating GRAOP, GRPSPA, and GRESPA.
RESPA, and which one? And
So the
GRAOP, which is
3,
the secretaries.
GRAOP, which is
Yeah.
secretaries, and then GRPSPA, which is paras. Yeah.
a lot
Yeah,
of,
Oh, no, goodness gracious, I'm
sometimes
sorry.
hear letters and sometimes hear.
It's
Yeah.
Grayson. I'm sorry, it's Grayson.
Oh.
It's not GRPSPA, it's Grayson. Grayson, GRESPA, and GRAOP are the 3 that they're
Okay.
looking to consolidate.
So that
You
makes
know.
more sense.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, and so they're called self-determinations, this process of consolidating unions, and sometimes I advise, back before I was counsel for a specific district, I'd advise don't agree to this because, some are exempt staff where they're not overtime laws don't apply to them. Sometimes they do, and that gets really messy when you're trying to negotiate with a whole bunch of different groups that have very different needs and requirements.
Right.
But these 3 work pretty well together, so it makes sense for us to move forward with allowing them to do that. And then one more slide, because this is something that the board's responsible for. So we do have financial reopeners in many of our contracts. And what that means is that despite the fact that the contract will be good for 2 or 3 years, annually, we look at salaries. And it's specifically for salaries only. And the board will need to approve any salary increases that we do as far as these contracts go. So typically once a year, we'll bring you some information on updated salary schedules for our CBAs.
is that happening anytime soon? I know we're coming in up to our 1 year almost.
Yeah, no, because typically the salaries are determined in June, and it was last June that there was no financial reopener for this year.
Okay.
Or the financial notice occurred,
Yeah, I don't think there was a financial.
There wa-
reopener for this
no, there
year.
wasn't one for this year, so there was nothing way to bring to the board this year, but typically it's annual. And so then the board will actually have to specifically vote and approve the increased salary schedules. And that's all I have, just kind of a basic overview so that the board understands when we might bring you something or when we might not. Any additional questions?
What is the process for so I understand that, it'll come to us when we have to approve it, but how does that process work if you're not negotiating a contract or simply just the salary schedule?
Just the
Like who,
Opener.
yeah. Like, so what is the process for that versus looking at the entire contract? So your bargaining units come together and just say, hey, let's just look at salary schedule only and not
Yes.
all other terms?
That's exactly what it is. So
Okay.
then we'd only bring you the updated salary schedule, not a whole updated contract, because only the salary schedule is what's changing.
Okay, so, and typically that happens every year?
Typically annually. There's usually an annual reopener
Okay.
in each contract, so that they say that even though the contract is settled and we're done, we do agree that even though we have a full contract for the next 3 years, once a year we are going to bring, at least discuss a potential financial increase. Now, sometimes based on, it hasn't happened as of late, but sometimes, the district doesn't have any money. Like, we can't increase the salary schedules, and we say, our apologies, there's nothing we can do right now, and so in that case, we wouldn't bring you anything because there's nothing to bring.
When it comes to what Trustee Rodriguez was just referring to, I'm curious to know this element before the board. Has it typically, when it comes to, I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm also just going to ask because I'm curious. Do we ever get the compensation studies where we ever say like, oh, district-wide, let's increase this, or we see that it is low, and that will come to us and not administrative?
Or teacher salaries as well?
Yeah.
Or just really any staff salaries?
Boom.
It would be any staff salaries.
Yes,
And
we
that's
have.
information I can bring.
When was one done last, do you know?
A compensation, oh goodness, before my time here, 2020, 2021 was the last big, but that was more for exempt staff. As far as exempt staff, meaning staff that's not subject to a union. As far as unions, usually what we do is, because half of what the negotiation process is the union coming in saying, this is what all the other teachers in the county make.
Yeah.
We need to make something similar. We need to have GRPS be paying its teachers something
Competitive.
similar.
Yeah.
And so that becomes part of the negotiation process, all those documents, and we can bring those to show.
So
And-
that's what made this, my apologies for cutting you off. I thought you were-
No, I'm good, yeah.
That's what made me wonder about that ahead of time, just to anticipate the needs. If we've already been seeing for these intentionally, I would say at least the last month, but the month and a half, last month consistently, but over the last 3 months, we've been hearing people come up and talk about this, and even the union reps kind of warn us about this. Is there a way for us to get ahead of this, do this compensation study, have some things up in front that we can actually start gearing up for that, so we don't have to wait until what it looked like was June 30th of a deadline that's coming up, which negotiations happen. I'm very familiar with, like, you already start those processes typically in December, if not already over the summer. That goes into the next year before they're approved to go into the actual, that's just the deadline. So I guess I'm trying to see how we can get ahead of any of the.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
we're doing this. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit, so it is important to me that you guys keep in mind that the union agreed to the contract as well,
Of
right? It
course.
wasn't us like strong arming them
Oh,
into.
no.
So
They
the
have
union
to
agreed
agree.
to it, and at the time that the contract was signed, which was now about a year and a half ago, we were in the top third. Since then, many other districts around us, because what we do and what other districts do, they look at everybody else's salary schedules. So there are many districts around us that are paying their teachers like $20 more a year. It's like, so when the GRE says we're at the very bottom, like we're not at the very bottom. But now that all the other districts have ratified their contracts, we are in the bottom third. And that is something we need to change, and I'm 100% on board with changing that. The union did submit a demand to bargain recently to reopen that, and I'm actually going to be rejecting it, not because I'm opposed to it. I want to sit down and have the conversation with them, but but they want something like now. Well, no, for the teachers, the contract doesn't expire until 2025, so they still have another year. And I'm happy to sit down, like, yeah, if we're in the lowest third, let's fix that, let's do something about it. But there's a difference between a formal, everybody on one side of the table, everybody else on the table, spending months negotiating this, and I'm saying, give me a demand, if we can afford it, let's do it. I want to make it a little bit less formal, just because it is an onerous process, the negotiating process, so we're absolutely going to be increasing teacher salaries. It's just a matter of how we're going to go about that. So when they say that I haven't responded to the demand to bargain, no, I haven't, because we're not going to actually sit down with a full negotiating team to do it, which they've been aware of for months, and they still say it anyway at board meetings, yeah.
And so that was the GREA?
That's
Because I
GREA.
think we received that email too, right? Or we were like CC'd on it.
Yeah, that's the GREA, that's the teachers
Okay.
union.
Okay. Very good.
And, well, I know that this has been a large topic as well as Grayson, and I don't know if they've even had,
If you're talking about childcare workers, so
Yeah.
we pay our childcare workers, we are the second highest in the county for childcare worker pay, which is why I'm a little bit surprised that they're focusing on childcare workers in particular. So we have childcare workers, most districts only have paraprofessionals, but childcare workers and paraprofessionals are roughly the same thing, except that our childcare workers handle special education scholars, or scholars with IEPs and 504 plans. We're the second highest paid in the county, so I'm not entirely sure what their angle is there. That's not to be said that it's not worth still looking at and seeing if there's more that maybe we can do. But we pay our childcare workers, at least as far as the county's concerned, very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I am new to this
Yeah.
as a board member. And, you know, I am very idealistic. So when you say, oh, you know, we pay them the most or pay them high in terms of other childcare workers or paraprofessionals, you know, that's not something to me that is what I'm thinking about in terms of pay to what to, you know, reference it to, but to like the cost of living or at least being able to even just afford a place. Because I was a childcare worker with GRPS and I could never have afforded a place on my own if I wanted to.
No,
and that
and
was,
you
you know, that
couldn't.
was 6 years ago,
Sure.
which I'm sure that, you know, well, I know that the pay has gone up since. Has it been significant enough to, you know, bring someone out of poverty? I don't know, right?
So childcare workers, you know, salary is typically, and hourly rates are typically based on the type of work, you know, I mean, it's based on a whole bunch of things. What the work expected paras and childcare workers, it's about $15 to $20 an hour, and that is typical. You will not be able to buy a house on $15 or $20 an hour. It's just, I'm not sure what more to say about that. I mean, that is
Right.
yeah.
And you know, and again, idealistic person talking,
course.
right? Like I want us to, you know, like I want us to blow the competition out of the water. Like I want us to say, hey, you know, we care about, you know, every person at every level of our employment, so much so that, you know, it doesn't even come close. And I know, again, idealistic view, but you know, I want other districts to say, man, like GRPS is leading the way so strongly in terms of like supporting their staff and paying their staff much more than any other district. And I know, again, we look at others to be better, but like no one's going to be like, oh yeah, let's, you know, give parapros $100,000. But at the same time, you know, like what is the most we can do? What is the most that we can?
So, and I don't mean to go too much into the nitty gritty, but part of the issue is that if we, you know, dramatically increase the hourly rate of one group, then we're going to have so many other groups coming in and saying, I work more hours, I do more, my job is harder. And I can tell you, we cannot afford to dramatically increase the hourly rate of you know, every painter, construction worker, or, you know, youth advocate. I'm trying to think of all the positions. I mean, it's, and that's where it becomes a
Yeah, it's a
little
big system.
sticky. And
Yeah.
also as part of, and I know you guys know this, but as part of a school district, you know, we're not a for-profit business that can increase the cost of the goods or services we sell. We have a limited number of funds, and we have to do our best to make sure that that we're giving an appropriate amount towards salary, but also ensuring that we cover the cost of operating
Services,
operating
yeah.
this
Our
district as a
services.
whole. So it is a complex, and I in my heart, I'm right there with you. But realistically, it's not always possible.
And another
Yeah.
piece in it that we need to think about is it's not just salary, it's also benefits as
Right,
well.
total
Yes.
So
compensation.
we need
Yeah.
to be having the conversation about total compensation
Mhm.
and not just a basic salary.
Right.
Because I believe, at least it used to be, there were several county districts that did not offer benefits to their parapros.
And we do.
And our parapros have always had full benefits.
That's good. Yeah.
And that's a huge one. So not only do our childcare workers, are they highly paid compared to the other districts, but we do offer them benefits when some districts still do not.
Yeah. It's good to know.
But no, I do not believe a childcare worker by themselves would be able, unfortunately,
Right,
to,
right.
yeah.
And when we're looking at these upcoming bargaining efforts, I'm gonna label it that way. These upcoming bargaining efforts, are we also exploring similar states with similar laws and restrictions to see about best practice or anything that's going on to make it a little bit innovative? As we know, we're competing not just with people across the state, right? We're competing with everyone across the nation. When I think about the aspect that is a nationwide shortage on teachers, I'm just thinking like, okay, how do we be innovative where we're combining or leveraging whatever assets we have, whether it's with community, with inside district, or even the intersect one of the comments that keeps sticking out to me when I asked this question was when we did the first listening session here, the week before that, and what came up about us being a very talented or very curated district that wants to have very specific specialties. How are we attracting the teachers who are skilled in that to bring that caliber of level of education for the scholars to operate and move in that particular space? And so that stuck with me in a real aspect of like, great, like we just don't want anybody to be like, okay, I'll teach, like you want them to be, of course we want people to teach, but you want them to be very subject specific in that specialty, especially with the caliber of what we're asking for. So like, how do we attract, not just retain, but attract that form of talent to our district, and compared to knowing that we're in a boxing ring with everybody else in the nation?
Yeah, so there's a couple of innovative things that we do, and things that we had a discussion in executive cabinet about this today as well. Because some of the feedback we're hearing from our staff was we want to be more trained. We wanted this additional training, and so we're saying, great, excellent. Let's, we do have mandatory professional development hours that all teachers have to have per year, but let's create a schedule of additional trainings and let's pay them for attending those additional trainings. So it's things like that. And so what I do, I keep a log of, because I'm subscribed to a whole slew of things in my position. And one of the things I'm subscribed to is kind of what other states do with teachers, and what other, not all states have a lot of unions for teachers. We do. And in fact, I'd probably argue the Educational Association is probably the strongest union in the country. And I mean that. Even above UEW and all that. I mean, they have a lot of power, and which is great in a sense, because what that does is they actually collect that info from other states as well. So I do try to see, part of what I try to do is see what other states are doing, to try to think of those innovative ways. So even if it's not strictly salary, here's some other ways you can get paid. Here's some other ways you can earn additional money, and also keep you up to scratch with your skills, and get you training on new topics and new subjects that you might be interested in or might not be aware of even existed that might be of interest to you.
Okay.
These are the kinds of conversations, too, that I can say that we've had as a board over the last 7 years in these introductory conversations about how do we want to better support our staff as we look to, what we're going to do with contracts. So, this is just Finance Committee, but know that as the entire board, these are the kinds of things we'll talk about.
Yes, and something, for example, that we've done recently is teachers that go on overnight trips. They weren't getting any additional compensation for it, and so we said, hey, let's double your daily rate. If you're going to be spending overnight for a couple of days, let's do it. And so those are the things, some of those more unique and innovative things we're doing to try to retain.
I've brought this up before, I forget where, like at what committee, but I wish there was a way to really make those things known
I was just
to applicants.
Yes, and actually we're doing that. And the reason, so if there's an agreement that we reach with the union in the middle of a contract, so let's say we have a contract for 3 years, and in year 1, the union's like, hey, we want to pay our teachers money for, overnight trips. We create something called an LOA, or letter of agreement, and it's a separate document that amends the contract. And that's not a whole negotiating, that's just something we can agree to with the union. And so what my plan is that beginning with the new, I don't want to put too fine a date on it because I still need to work out the details, but soon, my hope is to actually put all of those LOAs on our district website too. So that not only is the contract there, but you can see this is all the other stuff we do in between contract years to try to increase attracting teachers and retaining
I'm just
them.
thinking as a teacher, when I have conversations with other teachers, it's very much just based pay.
Right.
Well, they don't pay as much, or you would make more if you came here.
That's
And,
right.
and all of the other benefits are never discussed.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So actually what we're also, what our talent acquisition manager, Raul, who I know that you guys have met, part of what he's doing and what he's working on comms with, and it's not quite live yet, but we do have a behind the scenes version of it, is creating a massive benefits page and it will be included in all of our job descriptions too on our website when, people are looking for jobs. We're like, hey, look at the benefits we have, and it will cover literally everything we can think of to try to have that all inclusive, like, okay, so I might be possibly paid $100 or $200 less a year, but look at all this stuff that I get on top of it. And a lot of districts don't have a massive benefits page like that, so
That'll be advantageous for sure.
that's what we're hoping, yeah. It just need to get it up and running. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you
right.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really helpful.
Good.
And Yes, I know we'll be hearing more soon. Great. I was talking to somebody in banking recently, and he told me that the average home price across the United States right now is $400,000. And to be approved for a loan, you have to make $115,000 a year, which, so the definition of affordable house has changed dramatically in the last 3 to 5 years, because it's a different,
Here's another
difference
little
of- yeah.
added bonus for West Michigan particularly. To a family of four to afford a 2-bedroom apartment with our current rates, the hourly rate that a family needs to make is $34 and like 84 cents or something of that nature as a result of even being able to afford a 2-bedroom
those-
apartment.
oh my gosh, yeah, that's
It's
a
significant
crisis.
here.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Not
Okay.
including the interest rate, but that's a whole nother conversation.
right. That's right. Okay, we're going to move on to our resolutions now. So this will be the first time this committee has seen these, I think.
Yes. One of the things, this next one is our summer, we have to have a resolution to be able to levy our summer property taxes. So this is an annual request for the board to allow us to levy our summer property taxes. And as the finance committee, when you saw our August financial statements and you see a large amount come in under property taxes, that allows us not to have to borrow money. Many school districts borrow at the beginning of the school year because our first state aid payment doesn't come until the end of October. So having that summer property tax levy allows us to have cash to make those payments that we need to
Without
for
borrowing.
operating and not have to borrow money, so.
Questions or discussion on this item? If not, may I have a motion for approval, please?
Motion.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move on to the annual banking and investment resolution.
And it's another requirement that we annually bring you the banks and investment entities that we are planning to use. We're not making any changes, so our primary bank is PNC, but we also have accounts with Fifth Third and Huntington. And there's the list of where we've got our investments. If at some point we decide that we'd like to add another investment, for example, if in March when we sell our bonds, if we add another investment company to help manage that as well, we'll bring that back as a additional item.
Questions or discussion? If not, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to our donations.
I say now to the fun stuff with our donations. Kent Hills has been notified by Fox 17 that they've been selected for one of the Scholastic book fairs. So this is the estimate of the value of the book fair for Kent Hills at $13,000.
Great. If there's no question or discussion, may I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Sherry Lynn Noe.
That's what I was going to say. We have another donation here from Sherry Lynn. They did, at the beginning of school, some shoes and miscellaneous school supplies. So bringing that forward to the board.
Out of curiosity, do we ever match with her?
We have not.
Okay.
Typically, one of the things that we did do, she was wanting to get, I don't know if you've driven up and sometimes banks have, oh, you can make a donation for this charity. So we did open a bank account with Fifth Third, and she's been soliciting donations. So somebody in the Cascade branch to make donations to our account at Fifth Third, and then she's actually just emailed this weekend. I see cyber sales. How much money is in the account?
Okay.
So we're covering the cost of the fees that are incurred on having that bank account to allow her to make the purchases of donate. When somebody would, instead of going and buying a coat and putting it in a bin, if they're at the bank and want to say, oh, put $25 in GRPS's account, and she'll go and buy the accounts type
And
thing.
can you, any of you remind me of what is that distribution process like? How do we? 'cause I
How do we
remember-
choose which schools and where? goes, I'm not recalling.
That's what I was gonna say. Typically, we've worked with our communications department and we'll be working with our executive directors. A lot of them recently especially on the smaller donations, we've been, helping our homeless students. Like, I think the school supplies, went primarily to the homeless department to distribute, as the greatest need. But as you see, our next donation, she's out there actively, buying winter gear as well. So we've got a pickup scheduled later this week. She's anticipating having another donation ready before winter break and one shortly after winter break. So if you notice on the next one, it doesn't have an itemized list, and we're just doing an estimate between 5,000 and 7,000 because at this point we don't have another scheduled finance committee until sometime in mid to late January. So wanted to be able to distribute those as well to students before they go on winter break. Now, especially now that we have snow outside.
Yeah.
So, but when we get to those distributions and find out what we're actually getting, and if their smaller size codes come in, then we'll work with the academic EDs about where the greatest need is in elementary school. If they're larger codes, then it may be at a high school. So,
Can you remind me what designates Sherry Lynn Noe and Friends having to have this approved by?
the board policy is any donation estimated at $2,500 comes forward.
Okay. Because I know, like, my church donates stuff to Sibley all the time, but we must not have that designation. I mean,
That's what I was gonna say, and it also has to be one of those where
You're
You have to be
informed.
I'm informed,
Yes.
so if
Yeah.
things are going
yeah.
Yeah.
directly there, then
Slowly. Mm-hmm.
there's some of those I don't find out about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So some of it's just notifying you that this
Yep.
is, okay.
Which we appreciate your donation.
That's right. Okay, so we've got two. Are we ready to move this one forward? If so,
Can
may
we
I
do
have a
both
motion?
At the same time, since we're both separate?
I think they're different, unfortunately, items, so they're two different memos, so we should just take them one at a time. Yep,
Okay.
yep. May I have a motion to move this one forward?
Motion.
Support?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. And the next one, winter apparel.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Motion to approve?
Support.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. All right,
And
reports.
I was gonna say, into the financial statements, again, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on it. If you've got questions, I'll address those, but as you start to see, some of our percentages are getting out of balance of where we would like to see them. So we are currently working on our first budget amendment, so we'll bring that to January finance and get those aligned better for some of those items. One good news is this morning I got the email that our title grants, our consolidated application, we finally have it moved to grant funds available. So I'm not sure we'll get a draw in before the end of November, but if you'll see there, our federal restricted revenue is quite low. Because we haven't been able to do a cash draw on our Title I programs, our Title II, Title III, Title IV programs. So we'll get that processed here in the next week or so. I'm not sure we'll hit before well, I know the money won't be here even if we submit a cash draw this week.
So this topic deals with, I don't know if it deals with this month, but I definitely, based on this past month, today's Monday, so last week Monday's comment in regards to, I think it was the guy from the union, and he made the comment in regards to the funds that were, I guess, the larger amount that was available.
the fund balance.
Can you speak on that a little
That's what I
bit?
was gonna say, and I have that onto my to-do list, and I was gonna call him today, but didn't get a chance to follow up, but I will. So yes, as you might recall, our fund balance is higher than we've ever seen it at GRPS. So part of that, when we did talk about with the audit, that we've intentionally built up our fund balance using our ESSER funds, so we're not sitting right at that state 5%. So that's part of it. We've done some supplanting, which is allowed with ESSER, to build up our fund balance. So we're currently over the 15%, which is the board policy. But we also need to go back, and if you remember last year, we did a general fund transfer over to capital projects. We'll have a large transfer again in our first budget amendment to fund all of the HVAC work and some of the other projects that have come up, like the Ottawa pool, some of the auditorium work that we haven't been able to fund out of bond dollars. So to cover those, so we're gonna take a several $1 million transfer out of general fund, which will reduce that fund balance. But as Anya suggested, I am looking at where we are in fund balance and doing some projections out of where we're going to end up. The budget variance between budget and actual is at the end of the year was larger than I like to see it. It's been difficult to budget with these COVID funding grants. Some of it's been timing differences. So I know we've got at least kind of one more year with the COVID funding, but since this is our last year on ESSER 3, I'm hoping we can get that narrowed down a whole lot easier and not have multi-million-dollar variances due to the COVID grants. So I want to get back into our budget and actuals. There's a smaller variance, but I always want to end up better than what our amendment says, if that makes sense. You have the conservative accountant here that doesn't want to come back and say, oh, I thought you were going to be at a $10 million fund balance, and sorry, you're at 7. We spent more money than we had coming in, so.
No, I appreciate the conservative approach to the governance of funds, the governing of funds. My question or request more so would be, is there a way that you can provide us with some guidelines to what that fund could or could not be used for? I know there was how he kind of implied based on that as if, those funds could be used for other things to aid in either salary wages and other things. And so for my educational process, and probably helpful for the rest of the board, it would be nice to know what could or could not be done with that pot of money. And maybe that is something, once we have that information, maybe that is us convening, talking to figure out if there's something rises to the top. I don't know why I have coffee in my brain, so I was thinking like the phone rises to the top that allows us to be able to say, hey, have we thought about X, Y, and Z with this? Or can we be innovative with this if it can be allowed to be with our teachers or something of that nature? I just really would like to know what those parameters are, so we're not, and the community as a whole isn't hearing that information and not providing context to what actually can be done if there's limits around that. So we're not trying to paint outside of that box. I just think it would help clear up any form of confusion.
Okay. Yeah, to some extent, general fund balance is available for general operating purposes. Typically, our grants have been self-balancing. We've got a couple right now where we've got timing differences. So it's not totally self-balancing at this point. With USF funding and emergency universal service funding is USF funding, and then ECF funding as well is emergency connectivity funding, which is also a COVID grant related to technology. So those two right now are not self-balancing and kind of giving us a timing difference in our fund balance, but general operating dollars, we do have some leeway of how that can be spent, but once you spend fund balance, it's gone. So if we, for example, gave, I think earlier we said, if we're gonna pay all of our parapros $100,000 and benefits on top of that and give everybody else increases, then all of a sudden, all of our fund balance is gone, and how do you sustain that? So that'll be one of those as we do projections out of what can we do and still sustain it. The other part with the budget, looking at it, is, yeah, the state has had a lot of money and given us a lot of new categoricals and different funding sources as well, but they're also looking at the end of their COVID funding. They did set up a couple reserve funds, which are encouraging. There's a budget stabilization fund and a transportation fund as well. So hopefully some of that will sustain on the state side as well. But if they start to have a downturn as a state and our economy takes a downturn, then will they be able to sustain the healthy foundation allowance increases that we've had the last couple of years? At our school business officials, we're hearing caution that where we've been getting $400 plus increases in foundation allowance, we might be returning to, we're lucky to get $100 in just a couple years. So it's one of those where I just want to do projections out, see where we are, and not take our fund balance down so we're at that 5%. Over the years as a district, we've had to make some really hard decisions because we were so close to that 5%. So it makes it hard to weather a storm if you're at a 5% fund balance. And there was, I'm rambling, I apologize for that, but there have been years where the state came back and took back foundation allowance in June after the school year was done. So that
And then
totally.
in comparison to districts around us, our fund balance isn't high.
We're still, I went KSBO last week, we're actually still towards the bottom of fund balances as percentage of expenses.
Yeah. In my head, it's kind of like a fine line, and like, you don't want to have an outrageous fund balance because then it looks like you're
Not being
not
a good
putting
steward.
money where you should
That's
be.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's actually last week at KSBO, they showed where everybody ended at June 30th, and there are a few where I was like, you've got to me, a really high fund balance unless you're building up for a specific
Capital project or
capital
something, yeah.
project type thing. I don't want to, as a district, run a 30% fund balance.
But that's why we have policy,
Yeah.
That's
right?
right.
I was going to ask, what is our policy state between, because
Yeah, it's between
got a
5 and
range, right?
15%. So a 5% variance off of 10% fund balance, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The goal is 10% with the 5 on either side of it, so.
Why is the range so large?
Well,
feel
it
like
was, yeah, I put it into policy, I think, before my time on the
Yeah.
board. I don't know, is that a very
I
large
was gonna
variance?
say, at one point, there were so many years we were so close to that 5% that even stretching to a 10%, that was a stretch goal.
Yeah.
Prior to.
As a statewide, their recommendation used to be between 15 and 20%. So it did come through as, like I said, 10% was a stretch goal for us. But the ESSER funds have allowed us to supplant and build that up. So I would rather see us run at least, close to the 15% rather than the 10%. Just,
Rainy day.
yep.
Is that something that, because I think going down to 5% would be kind of ridiculous. Is that something we could revisit as a board to say, hey,
Policy?
yeah, like that's, I guess, yeah, policy committee, and I don't know when they're meeting, but, I think it's just such a huge range that it gives us maybe too much leeway, because, we can take it down to 5%, if it was a different board and they said, well, that's the policy, but then you run the risk of, hey, that's kind of a dangerously low fund balance to have, but, it's within our policy, so it's okay.
And I think you just identified why the policy has the range it has, is because it's meant to try to, it's consistency over time regardless of who's actually on the board at a given time. So
Right.
5 to 15 is enough of a range where we get into roughly 10, but there's some leeway on either
So it gives the board, opportunity to have.
But it might
Some room to
be
negotiate,
one of
right?
those to consider now that we have built up a fund balance is to raise it, so 5%, which is the state's early warning limit, that we really don't want to revisit.
Right.
So
Hear that.
maybe it becomes between a 9 and 18% or something, so you still got a range there.
Right, just
Yeah.
slightly
But you don't-
higher, yeah.
Drop down below
Yeah,
to the,
I think you make a good point. Yeah, we can change that.
Yeah. And sorry, I also had another question real quick, because you mentioned, so I know earlier this year we did move some money into capital projects, and then we were talking about the was it? Some of the construction happening within our district, and I know we are already starting to pull from bond funds.
We're still using up our prior
Oh,
bond.
it's not, okay.
No,
Okay, when I
everything
saw
that's
that-
coming through now is still prior bond.
Perfect, okay, because I was so confused over the weekend. I said, we're already using, okay. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we gotta
I
sell the
am
bonds,
no
right?
longer confused. Thank you so much. Because I was like, dang, they could have checked quick.
Yeah.
And I was
No,
like, okay.
no,
Oh,
and
we
that's one of
wish.
our last topics. We'll give you
Okay.
a highlight on that, so.
Yeah, and just like with COVID funds, and this was part of the question, but I guess it makes a little less sense, but still I'm wondering, can we supplant funds like we did with COVID and say, hey, we had this that was covered by our operating budget, but now that we have bond dollars, we can kind of,
Oh, can we supplant for bond?
for bond?
Typically, no.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get into it in a few minutes, if, say we are planning to go out to sell our bonds in March,
Yeah,
if there's something that absolutely has to be done in February, and we could bring a board resolution to say, in order to get started on this, we need to hire a design firm for XYZ project. Can you pre-approve that we're gonna use bond funds for it?
so they're kind of earmarked before we actually.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'd use
But that
general
would just
fund.
be, would be a
Okay.
timing thing, but for like, example, the Ottawa pool,
Yeah,
that the work will be done before then, and we didn't ask you to do it before we did the work, then, because we didn't even have the bond passed at
Yeah.
that
Right,
point.
right.
So those types of items, we can't go back and reimburse.
okay.
Okay, my computer just died. Forgive me, I'm gonna look over your shoulder.
All right, so
Agenda.
the next one we have
Bond
is the
construction.
bond
Oh.
construction update.
Mr. Smart?
You're
Welcome
up.
back.
And just out of curiosity, at the next school board meeting, you are presenting, that's next week, Monday, right? And so will you be able to provide, clearly, we have such a large audience today, a packed house as it is. And I say that not to be funny, but to also say like the amount of people that need to hear the aspect of what that, I'm gonna slaughter that name. The fund we were just talking about. I can't. Thank you.
Fund
balance,
The
yeah.
fund balance in the name. So the fund balance, I think if you could reemphasize that or what those boundaries are in between, or at that next meeting, I just think it helps level set that audience because it was intentionally said, right? And I think it would be very good to like intentionally be able to respond to that in a way that allows those parameters and not just seem like the district is just hanging on these dollars just to hang on them.
I can include that in my report, the committee report too. Yep,
Oh,
both
that's
and.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm,
Thank you.
yep. Well, actually, okay, so the bond issuance isn't a resolution. Okay, never mind.
Nope.
All right, yep. Okay, welcome back.
Hello again.
Hello.
Okay, I am pleased to say that these projects are winding down. I got confirmation today from the folks from Rockford Construction that the building will be turned over to us, have owner occupancy and substantial completion January 5. They did, however, they give me a list of some things that will continue to happen, but should not have any effect at all on our students or the use of the building. We'll have full access of the building. But because of weather and timing issues, some things will happen in the spring, like let's say, Montessori building, GR Montessori. We'll have site restoration happening, obviously, in the spring. We are creating a grass area on by Lion Street. All that used to be paved, and we ended up removing that. It's going to be grass, so that'll take place in the spring. It's ongoing right now, but it'll go beyond the 5th. We have commissioning, which is where they are adjusting all the systems, make sure that the heating and cooling is properly balanced, and that takes some time. A lot of that is just computer work, but sometimes they have to go there and do some manual adjustments. And of course, we have still some punch list items and some additional work that we ask them to do, like painting at GR Montessori. So that's what we have going on there. But both buildings will be then turned over to us January 5 fully, and we'll be occupying every space. And I'm super happy for that. At the Innovation Central, we do have some things also that are gonna go on until the spring. One of those will be the truck dock area that we have to repave and restore the concrete because of the weather again. We'll do that when the weather gets better, and replacing some overhead doors there. We'll of course have punch list items that we're working on and commissioning. The one thing that we're not going to have yet is the stage, the auditorium stage. We're still working on the restoration of that. Now, we are considering, we're just starting to look into it. One of the projects that it's on the list for the new bond is auditorium work. Maybe we'll roll right into the auditorium restoration on that one and keep it offline until that's done. But it's just a thought that a conversation I had with my team today has not been vetted. I just wanted to share that that's an option, and we can roll right into that and continue to just get it done. We actually did a lot in the auditorium this year under this project. So what is remaining, which is good news for us, Rhonda, because it's less work than what we originally anticipated, is to do the seats. I don't think we're going to be replacing them because there is historical value, but pretty much refurbishing all the seating, and house and stage lighting, and drapery, and the rigging. So that's basically what's left for us to do there in that auditorium. So that's good news. And that pretty much concludes where we are with this last bond project.
Do you recall this has been the most Monday of Mondays ever, and I don't recall what Dr. Roby stated, but is there I know the swim team has now, or is going to be starting their swim practice. How are we looking with Ottawa with?
Okay. Next Monday, I've been asked to give you a presentation on the Ottawa swimming pool, but I'll give you a little preview.
Just a little.
A little teaser, okay? The work on phase 1 is done. We are right now waiting for the grout to cure, so we have this entire week. And then next week, we start filling it up with water.
Awesome.
So once we have the water there, then we'll be ready for our swimming team and everyone to be able to use it. So that's why January will be the time for them to come in.
Listen, I don't know what we need to do around this, but because there was such a community, I would say outcry for this, I'm hoping there's some form of a celebratory ribbon cutting or something that just highlights this being a win for the district.
Yes, and I don't blame them at all for expressing that.
Yeah.
They were right. We needed to do it. Correct.
So I'm thinking about how do we bring them into that.
Now, I want to just say that this reopening is phase 1. Phase 2 is far more complex. It probably will be between $1 and $3 million, depending how far we take it. And one of the things that we learned on phase 1 is that the state will not give us variances. So in other words, if there's something that does not comply with today's codes, they will make us bring it to compliance. And that includes the pool depth.
Oh, interesting.
The pool right now, even though it complies
Not
to,
deep enough, is
it's
it?
not deep enough. It complies to how it was before. By today's rules, it's about 18 inches too shallow. So,
Important for diving.
That's
As
right.
a previous diver.
Well,
So,
yeah.
it's very
as a diver.
intentional in regards to the depth and when you
Yes.
make your socket to go into the actual water.
yeah, but believe it or not, the diving portion is okay.
That is
Yeah, it's the side that where they do the laps. That's the one that we are a little bit shy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting how we're going to achieve that.
Okay.
And then that will roll then into the redesigning, which is already, by the way, the design is about 90% done for phase 2.
Great.
But then that will affect the equipment and the pipe sizes, because if we have to make it deeper, you have more water. So now we have to resize everything to that. So that'll be interesting, and of course that we're hoping to include locker rooms and lighting and some other things, just make it first class.
So,
But that will be phase 2, and we're not there yet.
so anticipation of this since you gave us a taste for next week, based on what I heard you just say, I am assuming that means there will be a reopening, but then also a closure for them to make on that
For phase 2.
For phase
Yeah,
2.
probably, right?
And whatever, if we can get ahead of whatever that communication plan is, so parents are not shocked either if it's a month or 2 out. But you know what, I'm anticipating what we've already experienced. So like, if we can be ahead of that communication of when that's going to closure, what is that alternate place for them to practice, and just a very intentional timeline, so that way they have ample time to coordinate, whether it's carpooling or whatnot. I'm just anticipating
Absolutely. It's like we make mistakes. I make mistakes, but I try to learn from them. And one of the things that we've learned through this process is exactly that: is communication. Since the parents came to the board meeting, we met with them. We gather information, contact information, emails, and my team and I have been sending them emails. I think we've sent probably three emails, maybe 4, giving them updates as to where we are. So we will continue to that. I mean, working with Mr. Hendricks and communications, we also have the dashboard, so we'll be able to use that too. Now, to your point, we're already thinking about the fact that if we're going to be closing that, we probably need to, for construction, we probably need to do some other reinvesting in the city pool, because they are going to be housing the swim team, and we need to do some improvements there first. So that way we can move them. So
We are fortunate to have more pools than we need, I suppose,
Yes.
right? Like,
I think so
that
too.
is a good part of the hard story.
So anyways, that was my report. You got a preview. On Monday, I'll have probably a little bit more information as to the scope of work that we completed and the scope of work that we're hoping to do next time.
I have a curiosity, innovative question that I really am not expecting you to respond to. But as we are looking at our different facilities that was presented in that plan, again, I'm always looking at like the assets that we have in our community, and sometimes people are able to provide different ways to view things or systems or solutions to a systematic problem. And one of the things that came up, I want to say particularly last week as well, that kind of stood out to me was there's a couple school districts, not in the state, that have repurposed buildings to be like one building in particular became like their athletic center
Like
for
a
the
field
district.
house, kind of, yeah.
Like a field house, so there was like one centralized location for their pool, one centralized location for their activities. So it had me start thinking in regards to any of our facilities, like could one of those buildings as a whole be repurposed into one district-wide meet that can house those different activities, so we don't run into some of the things that we are experiencing at a district. So not expecting you to answer, but I'm just dropping that as a way of maybe that is another thing to consider at some point in time.
It's another idea.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
We got a house and field already. Let's keep it going.
A pool.
Underneath the, it opens up.
Wow.
Scary and sweet.
Engineering challenge, I think.
Engineering marvels will be on TV.
Super scary.
We have one more item, I believe,
Thank you.
Yep.
Which
one
ones?
more
Thank you,
thing.
Mr. Smart.
Since we successfully passed our bond, I've been working with some of our advisors on what this bond issuance is going to look like. So I wanted to give you as Finance Committee members a preview of what this process is going to look like. We're going to continue to work with our financial advisor, which is PFM Financial Advisors. Our bond counsel is Varnum, and we are going to continue. Our senior managing underwriter is going to be Stephens Nicholas and Company. Past practice, that's who we've used for our last three with 2016, 2017 bond sales. We're looking at doing a negotiated sale. This means that since we've selected an underwriter, that we can work directly with that underwriter and they can help us with structuring the bond, what that looks like, the timing of the issue, preparing the official statement, and obtaining a bond rating. And they also help with pre-sale marketing and then negotiate interest rates on our behalf. If you do competitive, a lot of that work has to be done by us or our financial advisor, and so it's like I would rather use the X, and then you're going competitive and you get what you get. And so it's like, you know, the negotiated sale allows us some flexibility. I don't think anybody on March 13th, 2020 anticipated COVID and what that would change our world. But if that's the date if the next week was when we had gone out for competitive bid on a bond sale, I think it would have been far different than what we get. So having negotiated, you get some timing, flexibility in what that looks like.
Is that what we've done in the past? Have we negotiated previously?
Yes,
Okay.
our last 3 bond sales have all been negotiated.
Great.
And so if, as they're starting to do some of the marketing, if they're hearing from people that want to buy our bonds that, we really need things at longer terms versus shorter terms or whatever that looks like, that's where we can change how our bonds are structured. And all of that technical stuff that goes behind it. But the other thing, they will help with obtaining a new bond rating. Currently, we are using Moody's, and we have an A3 rating. They've been looking that maybe it's time that we go back and look at Standard & Poor's and what a rating might look like from them. That process takes 3 to 4 weeks. Also, I brought down the example of our prior official statement, and you can see how large and it's got a lot of information in these official statements that they'll help pull together and what that looks like. And so that will take a process as well. And they'll do the pre-sale, like I mentioned, the pre-sale marketing. We're targeting to have the sale be sometime in mid-March. Also looking at that timing. Our bond counsel has been working and has sent me over a draft of what the bond resolution will look like. Related to that, we'll be bringing that bond resolution to your full board at the December 18th meeting to be passed. That will allow us to get to work early in January on all of these steps that need to happen before we can actually issue bonds then in March. So they said it would take 10 to 12 weeks after we get the bond resolution, so.
So are these services covered through the bond dollars themselves?
Yes,
Okay. I was just wondering.
yes.
Perfect.
So that was my preview of what you're gonna see. It's over a 30-page bond resolution, so it's a very lengthy resolution.
I appreciate
Not like
the
these 1 or 2
preview.
page ones,
Summary.
but.
Okay, great.
Okay, and that's all I have.
Okay, well, this will give everyone enough time to get home and log on to our first virtual town hall regarding the Reimagine GRPS with Us plan. So with that, we will adjourn this committee meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.